in London last year. And then Tim, who's an agronomist, who can talk us through kind of practical examples of using biology, and Jenny, who can show us what she's been doing and the difference that she's seen. Okay, so let's start with you, wonderful ladies. So you travel across the world and you see the most amazing projects and meet the most amazing people. Tell us about some that really build soil health and what they do and what they've taught you.
Thank you, and hi to everyone today. I'm Bridget, and
I'm Henrietta,
and we are the Land Gardeners. And I think what we worked for a long time at a horticultural scale, trying to look at different ways of feeding soils. We came up with a method of composting, which is had come down through Steiner and Pfeiffer, and we learned from the Lucas in Austria, and we found that really game-changing. We raised our soil carbon from 5, which was pretty good, to between 12 and 15% over about 4 or 5 years. And at that point, some scientists came to us and said, "What are you doing? That should take 100 years." And like anything, we then jumped the garden wall and started making it farm scale, more tricky, trying to work out ratios of how you scale up. And often with compost, it's a big issue. People say you can't go big, and so we thought, come on, there must be people doing this around the world. So we did a big map of who was doing these sort of composting methods, and went on tour and found some pretty amazing things.
I think it's just about being so close to that one.
That's quite scary.
Can we move this out?
Oh, it's like we're playing a game. So on the other side of the world, in Australia, Rhonda and Bill Daly, now in the 70s, 80s even, have been doing this method of aerobic composting, the Lubka method, and they have transformed huge tracts of land in Australia. And of course, there is that real imperative to do it. We're cosy in the UK in comparison compared to the soil challenges that they face there. And they are doing the Lubka method of composting, which they are then also spreading in with extracts. And when we went there, we used the compaction tool to go down in their soil. It was so hot, it was absolutely barren everywhere else apart from their fields, and then literally it just went down a metre. I mean, it was phenomenal what they've done with their soils.
And one of what they're doing, it's not, there's not one silver bullet, as we all know, and there's many different ways of feeding the soil, from composting to worms to homeopathics to herbs, and what they've discovered is also, they look at each farm individually and look at the minerals and the lack of minerals, and they team it up with these amazing compost extracts and are getting phenomenal results. And I think something like that in this country could be brilliant if anyone's interested. And the other thing is often what we hear about is scale. How can we do this at scale? It's all very well doing it at a horticultural level. So then we headed west to Western Australia to the Haggertys, who have been made Australians of the Year. We drove through like 400 miles of flat brown land, and there in the middle of Australia was this 60,000 acres of a flush of green, and I can't tell you what that looks like. I mean, it was incredible. And they are dealing with 1% moisture. They didn't start with a family farm. They've built it up. They have the most incredible kit and precision kit getting things in the ground, and it's the way they put the seed in. But they're doing it all without chemicals and all with brews, and they're managing to grow crops, and they're changing the land. And I've never seen such amazing merino sheep in my whole life. Incredible. On 1% moisture. So just think what you could do here.
And it was the sheep that was what was really powerful. They rewilded a third of the farms, a third of the fields. They let the sheep go into those areas. They eat all the goodies. They come out. They have this phenomenal microbiome, gut microbiome. They're then licking the produce. They're then pooping this delicious goodies onto the soil. They then got salt bushes. They allow huge diversity, salt bushes throughout the fields that the sheep also eat. And so that combination has absolutely been a game changer.
And by the way, they've done studies, and this is a really great plug for all of you wanting to use microbes, both in your own gut and in your animals. But they've worked out that their sheep, who they think are really top notch, and you look at them, really are. They can survive on half the water that you're supposed to give to merino sheep. Half the water. So that makes you start thinking, how do some people walk out of the desert after 10 days still alive, not having anything to drink, and other people die on day 2? And I think it's all pointing to good gut microbe, and in both animals and humans. And then just quickly, because I know we need to keep going, but just because we just really want to inspire all of you. Another thing, we've just been visiting an incredible farm in Italy called La Viala, and they have been doing biodynamics for 50 years. They have 4,000 acres. They've tried all the other different inputs, and they employ 200 people. They make money. They sell direct to customers, and they don't sell at a huge markup. They sell real food to real people. It is absolutely phenomenal. Annetta from La Viala will be talking in the Soil Medic tent, which we're organising at Groundswell. Come and see her. And then just quickly we'll talk about syntropic farming.
So it's not the survival of the fittest, actually, just to tell you all. It's actually about community. And syntropic farming is all about a community of plants. And we've just been out in Portugal and met this phenomenal farm where they are layering their growth from low herbs up to fruit trees. Then they grow them with fast-growing eucalyptus and oak trees. And they are actually finding that this diversity of plants is actually producing higher growth. They then prune at the top layer, and then the cuttings go down to act as a compost for the herbs below. So it's a closed system, and with all these systems we're talking about, they're closed. You're not bringing in expensive inputs. You're using what you've got on the farm, which must also be economically a real game changer as well.
Great. Thank you both so much. Very inspiring. I'm just going to move over here. Tim, when you're in a field, what are you looking for? What do you see that are common problems?
Gosh, we could be here all day. Morning, everybody. When I'm in a field, the first thing I used to do before I had my accident, I'd be feeling the field with my feet. You can always tell the biological soil because you can feel the springiness in your feet as you're walking across there. It's just like a sponge. And once you start to get that sponge, it doesn't matter if I go out there with a big tractor or anything, it just springs back up. I don't get compaction, which is why it always amuses me when people rave about controlled traffic where they're always driving in the same place. I had tram lines that had been in the same place for 18 years and you wouldn't find any compaction there because it would still go a good crop because that biology would be lifting that compaction out. Biology will do all the work for us if we just let it. It's been doing it for millions of years. It's only human beings that start to get in the way by thinking we knew better, adding all these synthetics and destroying that biology that had been working, that formed the planet in which we live and formed us. We've got more biological cells than we have human cells. So I'm looking for all that. I'm looking to smell the soil. I'm looking at the colour of soil. I'd be looking at infiltration rates. I'd be looking at worm activity. Worms do so much for us. And the whole health of that soil, which you can tell good soil just by using your own senses. When you pick it up, you smell it, you feel it. I've even been known to taste it. You can see what a good soil is.
What about the common problems you're seeing?
Common problems is always compaction because we've been using synthetics for so long. After the Second World War, farmers were asked to produce cheap food. We did a fantastic job. We overproduced in many cases, but that cheap food, and still is, comes with consequences. We can't keep doing it to the planet. We only have to look at our oceans and see all the dead zones from overuse of nitrogen and phosphorus. 70-90% of the air that we breathe comes from marine photosynthesis. We can't keep watching these problems where we're having so much erosion from over-tillage. You only have to look at rivers in an autumn and you'll see they've all gone brown. That's not just soil that is so precious. It's also all those nutrients that we're losing that we're just being floated away. If that was somebody's bank account, they'd be furious, but they seem to just act as if it's normal. It's not normal. Soil doesn't like being disturbed. I always use the analogy. It's like somebody putting a ball and chain through your house, and just as you start to lay a few bricks to build somewhere to live again, somebody puts a ball and chain through again. Soil naturally should not be disturbed, and once you get a real functioning soil, it doesn't need to be disturbed. It will aerate itself, it will function. But compaction, because we've burnt so much carbon out of our soils, I see it time and time again. People try to reduce and farm the way I do, and not move the soil, but you've got to earn the right to farm the way I do, and that means getting that carbon back into your soil, getting those cover crops and getting biology back, because I'm a big believer that plants were formed to feed biology. It was biology that created plants. And once you get something growing and you start to get that interaction and we get the rhizophagy cycle going, that's when we can start to run and start to cut back on the inputs. But time and time again, I just see compaction after compaction because people are trying to run before they can walk.
And what do you think the barriers are to people taking up more biology?
The biggest problem is always the compaction between somebody's two ears. I think people have got so used to buying stuff out of a can and getting an instant result. When you start working with biology and really understand that what it can do, biology can do everything we want it to do. We just need to ask the right questions, and we still understand so little what goes on in our soil. We probably only understand 10%. We know more about outer space than we do what's beneath our feet, and a lot of that has been done because there's no money to be made out of it for the big pharmaceutical companies and everything else, ag chem companies. There's no money there, so nobody's done the research, but it's farmers' interest to do their own research. We should all be coming together, helping each other and guiding each other on the path so we can leap forward, because there is so much in biology. Once you get it working, it will just give everything you're asking for. There's so much minerals and elements in the soil. All we need is the biology to release them, and that's when, say, once you get that, add that biology back and get it working, that's when the magic happens.
Do you want to tell us about your book?
Yeah, first day of my book being out on sale today, so proud moment for me. Took a couple of years in writing, but no, it just depicts my journey and how I do it, how I farm, and how I haven't used fungicides now for seven years probably. I haven't used insecticides for 11, 12 years. I haven't used growth regulators, fungicidal seed treatments. It's all about working with biology. I class myself as a nutritional, biological farmer, but more recently now I'm just an advisor. But there's so much to learn and so much for people to be on the journey, and sharing that knowledge has always been my number one from day one. I've been a regen farmer for 18 years, but it's no good me just doing it. I want every farmer in the world to change the way they're farming. There is no planet B, this is all we've got, and we've got to look after it. I always think last century will be known as the chemical century and will always be frowned upon. This century's got to be the biological one, because biology's got all the answers.
Hi everybody. Feel like I've had a little bit of like inside access to Tim's mind and the book that he's got, because I've been working with him now for 2 years, and he's been coming up to the farm and looking at our soil and trying to help us improve. Just a little bit of background to myself. I've only been farming 4 years. I grew up on a farm, family farm, with my mum and dad on the Yorkshire Wolds, and then my dad was kind of farming in the thick of the 1990s, wasn't really enjoying it, didn't encourage my brother or myself really to get into farming, so we went off and pursued other careers, and then in the last 4 years my husband and myself have come back to help my dad and support him at the age of 74, even though he never stops. And since I've been back, I just started reading a lot about what we were doing on our farm. My dad's been farming regeneratively, but he probably will admit himself that there was a couple of missing links, and my viewpoint on that is that missing links was biology and also an element of livestock. We were a mixed farm growing up, but with him being on his own, he ended up just selling the cattle and selling the sheep and not using them over the land as we had done previously. And so what my husband and I have done is bought in a small flock of sheep, which we now graze over the 100 hectares of our arable land over cover crops, putting in some herbal lays as well, and just starting to try and bring the life back into the soil and reduce the amount of pesticides that we have been using. As Tim said, my dad grew up in the chemical generation, and from his perspective, that's been the only way to farm for a lot of years. And so it's just trying to show him and ourselves that there is a different way to do it. Yeah, of course. So basically, what you've got here is we've been using biology down the spout. We've got a liquid applicator, which we fix to our drill very cheaply. Everything at our farm is run on a very tight budget. So we put a liquid applicator on the drill, and we direct drill into, these are combinable peas that we are growing this year. One of the fields had a brilliant winter cover crop, the best one that we've grown, and the sheep had grazed over it. And then we also used the liquid down the spout as well. And then you can see on the left-hand side, the other field, there was no cover crop, no sheep, and no biology. And this was the roots after probably about 3 weeks of growth. And there's such a significant difference where biology had been used, but not only where biology had been used down the spout, but also where the sheep had grazed and where the cover crop had been. And so it really shows that using biology, but also using the livestock on the land and the difference that it can start to make. Not only that, and it's quite difficult because I probably made the soil a bit wet that I brought down last night because there's some of the peas on the side here, but the smell of the soil is completely different in the field where we've had the cover crops growing and the sheep grazing as well.
What do you make of all this?
I've been a fan of biology since 2012, and I really got into it. I read a book by Neil Kinsey called Hands-on Agronomy, and it was the first time I'd ever heard of nitrogen-fixing bacteria. The air that we breathe is 78% nitrogen. Why do we want to be buying if these trees haven't had any synthetics put on them to get them to grow? They've done it all by using Mother Nature. And so when you see the pictures there, and Jenny's got some samples over the other side, and once you start to see the power of biology and what it can do, and the difference of when you get the rhizophagy cycle working, and that's basically the cycle of photosynthesis of nature taking that carbon dioxide and sunlight and turning it into carbohydrates and sugars and amino acids, which the plant then puts down as exudates to feed that biology, and in return that biology will give it whatever it wants from the soil or from the air. And you can see the difference in the root systems there, and once you start to get that bigger root system, and I was going to bring my handheld tester down with me, and I, like an idiot, I forgot to put it in my bag this morning. I actually took it out of my bag because I thought it'd be too heavy, and I forgot all about that we were going to do this. But I've got a handheld reader, which is a sensing sensor, and I can read all the nutritional availability that's in the plant. And I know full well when we've got that bigger root system, because we're got more microbes working for us there, we're accessing more water, but we're also accessing more nutrition. Once we get that nutrition into the plant, we're going to get more growth, we're going to get a higher yield, and we're going to make more money. But also, more importantly, we're going to eat more healthy food. To me, there's a massive problem with human health at the moment, which everybody seems to be taking as if it's the norm. We know cancer, we've never seen so much. Diabetes, we've never seen so much dementia, we've never seen so much I'm trying to think of the other one. It'll come back to me. But we've got so many health problems, but nobody's asking why. And for me, that's all coming back to our soils aren't working. Our food can be 50-70% less nutritious than it was 100 years ago. It's no wonder we've got an obesity thing. Our bodies are crying out for nutrition, and all we're feeding it is empty calories. We've got to get back to raw foods. Our bodies instinctively know what it wants to eat if we give it whole foods and give it the chance. And that's the important thing. And once we start to make that connection, and we start to get those phytochemicals in our food, and we get the oogofynin, which only comes from having that fungal connectivity to the plants, that's when our health system goes through the roof. And we shouldn't be getting ill. We shouldn't be needing all these antibiotics and everything. And to keep ourselves well, we should be able to eat ourselves well, just by having the right food. And that's what life is about, connecting with Mother Earth and having that connection. And then the smell, I mean, when Jenny was just talking about the smell, that is acetyl-MICT, it's that earthy smell, and it's known to give that endorphin effect in our brains, to give us that feel-good factor. You can't help but smile. But eating that food that's been grown in that healthy soil, that's what's going to make us well. And everybody needs to be aware of what they're eating. We are what we eat, but it all starts with that biology and that root system and having that connection.
The session was intended to be as interactive as possible, so rather than speak for another 20 minutes, I'd love to have enough space for questions. So go for it. Hi. Do you want to? Thanks, Lara.
Hi, I'm Lara from Botanic Show. I'm just immediately listening to you about the health, benefits of everything that we're talking about. But it seems to me like we've also got this amazing, we've got this kind of two lines, like exponentially going up, like the need for what we're doing. And then kids, like all they do is spend their time on their health, but they're kind of like doing it in the wrong sphere, to do with like fake stuff or just the gyms and not the outdoor stuff. So we've got a really big opportunity to harness their interest in health, and then match it with what we're doing here. So if anyone wants to talk about that, I think we should like act on it soon, because it might be on to the next thing soon. Sorry, a bit nervous, sorry, I'm out of breath.
Well done. I think there's a massive lack of knowledge in our younger generation. It has come from the generation before, because when I went to school, we all did home economics. We all learned how to cook, and we've lost that connection with Mother Earth. And we need to get. When I went to the school I went to, we had our own garden, we had our own farm there, and we knew everything because we were involved in growing vegetables. We were involved in seeing the animals grow. And we need to get that back. And yes, I know a lot of inner schools can't, but surely we can arrange trips to get them out and learn, because isn't that the meaning of life? I think we've got too much caught up in the capital system, and I know that's probably getting into politics, but we're missing the whole point of life in my mind. And life and sharing food and having good health and spending time with the family, growing food and making that connection. Surely that's what it's got to be all about. Rather than we've got to get bigger, we've got to make more money. We're working harder and harder and harder, spending less and less time with our kids, and they're spending more and more time on their own, and they're not getting that connection. And food is so important, and seeing our food grows and making that connection, we've got to re-educate our kids and change the system, because it's broken.
It's a really good question, and I spent 2 years in when I wasn't farming, working for the Department of Health and Social Care on their obesity campaign that Boris brought in when he nearly died after COVID, and they told him he was overweight, didn't they? And we got all this money for obesity, and I kind of worked on that programme for 2 years and realised that it was the most important, but also the most hopeless campaign that I'd ever worked on, because it was so complex and so challenging to make changes. Then coming into farming and realising that farmers are rewarded for yield, they're not rewarded for quality of food, and I think that fundamentally has to change. Like, our ambition as a farm is shifting from yield now, slowly, with my dad just about on board, to nutritional density, but the farmers need to be rewarded for growing nutritionally dense food. And so understanding that actually if you've got a biologically active soil and you're grazing your sheep over that loads of diversity of different things, the meat is a fantastic quality. The omega-3s and the omega-6s are balanced. If you eat grain-fed, those omega-6s are through the roof and they lead to long-term chronic inflammation. We have a right to know these things, but unfortunately, as it stands at the moment, we aren't told about it. And I think we would love as a farm to be supported to grow nutritionally dense food and not just yield, but there are very small companies out there starting to make a few waves, but there isn't a general movement in supporting farmers to grow better food.
Education piece. Well, I mean, that was part of the reason for doing the soil exhibition in a way, was just to raise awareness about the importance of soil health and this link between our health and the health of our soils. And we had huge. We had a lot of people coming through. We had 45,000 people coming through, and so we were amazed. Actually, the appetite is there for people to learn more about it. We're doing one in Hastings in the autumn on the connection between the soil and the sea, and those ecosystems are linked. And the more, in fact, they were saying this when we were in Australia. The Haggertys were saying that we have been talking to farmers for 20 years, but we need to change the dial with consumers from the children up. And the more we can do to raise that awareness and make people realise that they have the power to change things through teaching children, through how they use their money, the better it will be.
Can't hear.
Oh, good idea.
Repeat the
From our
question.
perspective, it's hard enough to try and get
Question.
places that are buying probiotics to think about the soil-based probiotics that are more natural. That's quite difficult because it takes a huge education piece for our wholesalers and customers. So there's a lot of work to do with it.
There was some school academies in London that we were working with during the show, where they were getting children to grow wheat, and then getting them to grow them and then dry it and then mill it and make bread from it. So that was a pretty amazing thing. And so there's lots of things that are bubbling up in the school curriculum, and I suppose it's just about tapping into that.
Thank you. Questions, Katie? You might have to come up here for
Thank you, everyone. This is the resilience workshop, so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the resilience increases that you get from healthy soil, please.
You always ask the question there. Biology, it's a living entity, so it's always going to work within the environment you put it in, and it will change identity if it's in the wrong environment to support itself in that environment. But once you create the right environment, as I said earlier on, that is when you're going to get that nutrient density, because it will support it. It's supporting the plant. There'll be more water available, more nutrients available, and the whole soil, the whole ecosystem starts to improve. And I always called my farm the best restaurant in town, because once you get your soil working, the knock-on effect from having that biological working soil is you get all the bird life back, you get all the insect life back. I used to catch moths for Rothamsted, and I remember the guy I was sending them to, and he said, "Tim, you're getting moths like a woodland situation, and I'm an arable farm." And he said, "I don't know how you're doing this. We've never had this before." But once you create the right environment, everything comes back, and it's the same with biology. Once you create that right environment in the soil, it will start working for the plant. And that's when I could step away from using synthetics, so I could grow a 12-ton to the hectare crop of wheat with just 50 kilos of applied nitrogen, topped up with a little bit of foliar, because I do a lot of sap testing to monitor that plant's health. I always treat my plants as athletes. I want them to perform the best they can, but I can keep them out with disease. So I'd use Bacillus subtilis and Bacillus amyloidonephasians as natural fungicide, and Fusarium, for instance. Every paper that's ever been written on it that I've ever found, it's 90% effective on Fusarium. If we use a fungicide, it's probably 50-60% effective. It costs loads more. I can do that for £3 a hectare, £4 a hectare. But when I tested it, when I'd done untreated, I'd got 36% Fusarium. Where I treated, I'd got 0.2% Fusarium. So that's not only better for us as consumers, but it's also better for that plant seed going back into the ground, because I'm a big believer in epigenetics, so I continuously save my seed, because I'm always thinking epigenetics, it's going back into the environment it's been grown. So it's always going to be a stronger plant to resist the problems that its parents have just encountered on that growth journey. But using natural fungicides and fixing nitrogen at the same time, it just comes into its own. When you're working in harmony with nature, everything just fits into place. And I always use the old nursery rhyme, merrily, merrily down the stream, life is but a dream. It is when you're working in balance with nature. You start to get out of balance and you're paddling upstream, nature's always going to win.
And have you seen anything in the resilience area from your experience?
I probably can't add much more than Tim from a kind of the crop and the arable perspective, but I suppose I can from our sheep flock perspective, in that I think in the 4 years that we've been grazing them across diverse pastures, if you don't count and lambing time and the losses the losses of lambs in that first day, we've only lost one lamb. We've got ahead of sort of 80 sheep. It's not a big flock, but over 4 years to have only lost one lamb is quite impressive, and I think it's to do with the resilience of the sheep, because we're starting to support their guts, their rumens, their microbiomes, and we're producing healthier animals. And Bridget, you're saying about the Haggertys and how healthy their sheep look. We're very proud of our flock, because they are really healthy, and that's noticing a big difference.
And I mean, it's about our gut microbiome, isn't it, that mirrors the microbiology in the soil. And just as we as humans are always thinking about our resilience and not turning to antibiotics and eating well, eating a diverse diet and really nurturing our gut microbiome, so we need to do the same in the soil to help the soil be really resilient.
And you find if you have got really healthy plants that haven't been forced by synthetic fertilizers, then you don't have that forcing of sweetness in the top of the plant. They have Shabruso, I think it was, that talked about the smell of the plant. And Mother Nature's really clever. I mean, if an insect is attacking your plant, it's because it's not supposed to be growing. and they're taking it out. So, you know, the idea is that you grow things well with the good microbiology, and you grow healthy plants that actually insects don't even want to taste. So, yeah, I think that's the ultimate resilience.
Thank you so much. More questions? And yes, fantastic. Do you mind coming up, sir? Oh, don't want to go that way. Thank you. This is the question area.
Thanks. Roger, visiting from New Zealand. I was interested if the panel have got some suggestions for what I should talk to my wife about when I get home in relation to the soil health on our 20-acre property in North Canterbury.
Get the Kiwi on it.
Should I get my notebook?
Do you know what? You're a very lucky man. I'm a South Canterbury farmer, so nearly your neighbour. You have got some of the best resources in the world, you know, available to you. Someone called Kay Baxter, who's working for the Coanga Institute. Anyone could actually look up her website. She's doing the most phenomenal work with soils and growing, and it's continually evolving. You know, I've known her for 40 years, and she is incredible. So get onto that website. There's also an amazing source of seed if you're using that. The other person who's incredible is Chaos Springs with Steve Erickson, who's up in the North Island. I don't know if any of you have heard about the Chaos Sprayer, but it's an incredible tool that that are actually starting to come into England. We've imported one, and it dynamizes and sprays at the same time, which we don't have time to go into, but if any of you are biodynamic farmers or interested in energy, that is the next phase. I mean, we're all talking about biology, which is great, but there is another component to growing energetically, and Steve Erickson also makes all sorts of his own potions from, you know, and things. So we could go on and on, but you're lucky. You should go and visit both of them, North Island.
I can't add to that.
I always say the same, really. Buy a fork, not a worm slicing spade, and dig some soil up and smell it and see what it's doing. And if you can and get really interested, get a microscope and start and put a slide underneath the microscope and see what you've got there. You can teach yourself to learn. Smell your soil, look at how it's working, do an infiltration test where you just put in a tube in and measure the infiltration rate of an inch of water. And when I first started my journey, I was probably about 7 minutes. When I got not to the end, but when I got my soil where I wanted it, it was 37 seconds, and it would just keep on infiltrating. And it's what always gets me. You know, there's so much talk about flooding and flood defences, and yet nobody seems to want to invest in our soil, which is the best water storage facility we've got and where we need it to grow our food. And it's just absolutely balmy in my mind. But get to know your soil and start to understand it. That's the main thing. And have a soil test and see how much carbon you've got in your soil, and then we can start and build on that and build something to grow some lovely food.
Great. We've got 10 minutes. I would encourage you to use the amazing people and resources we have on the panel. So any questions, technical and otherwise, you might have to come here because it's going to squeak.
Thank you so much. I think one of the things that's interesting to hear from you is what are the tools in your toolkit? You're saying smell, touch, feel, but microscopes, anything else you can offer that's helpful to have to help you kind of understand the mystical world of what's going on in the soil?
Thank you. Great question.
It's all pieces to the jigsaw puzzle because we know so little, when we're totally honest, of what's going on, and it's a whole new sphere. I mean, we've only discovered the rhizophagy cycle probably 13 years ago. It just shows how little we ever understood about our soil. So it's getting a full analysis of your soil for me. I mean, every element and seeing what carbon we've got there, and then from there, it's trying to build and rectify any antagonisms that we know we've got in the soil. You know, is it high in chloride, is it high in iron? Start to learn and see what we can do. And then I'm a big believer in sap testing, and I do have a handheld device now which has just been launched, which idiot as I am, I forgot to bring it down with me. But measuring that plant and seeing what's going on, because you can sometimes have brilliant indices in your soil, but it's not actually becoming available to the plant, and that's where we've gone wrong in the past, I think. And once you start to do a sap test, we can see exactly what's going on. It's just like having a blood test then, and we can by doing foliars applications can be 3 to 12 times more efficient than soil applied, and we're not polluting, and we need so much less to still grow that high yielding plant and full of all that nutrition that we're after. But it's all pieces to the jigsaw, and I've got lots of handheld devices that I also use to measure different elements, and a refractometer is a brilliant one to start with because it's a cheap piece of kit and you can do so much with a refractometer, from testing for boron to calcium, but more importantly seeing what sugar that plant is producing, because if you've got the nutrition right in that plant, I used to get Brix readings of 18 to 24. When you're producing that much sugar, that's what the plant's doing. It's a factory and photosynthesizing. If you get a plant that's full of nitrate, it'll go down to 6s and 7s. You can stop nitrate. It's so deadly to the plant. It makes weak cells. It's where we get the insect attacks, and it's where we get all the disease pathogens coming in. So it's all pieces to the jigsaw puzzle. Monitoring. We've got so much at our fingertips now that we can monitor plant health and rectify the situation, that it's just such an exciting time to be growing food, in my opinion.
I think I maybe would say like your mind, and just read, because I think I've spent 4 years just reading books and listening to podcasts about this type of farming, and there is now so much information out there, and it's incredible what you can learn in like a 45-minute podcast if it's relevant to, and so many of them are relevant if you can find them. And then the other thing I was just going to say is just the observation, and it is the roots that you can see on the photos there and the plants. It's worth coming and having a look, because the way we looked at them originally when they were younger, one of the other biology products that we were using, the BioPlus T, showed better root growth in the first instance, and we'd also used microbes working with these guys too. When you then look at the roots now, the microbes roots have taken over the BioPlus T roots in terms of size and growth, and just doing more of these things and observing. I went and dug the plants up again, yesterday to have a look, and was really quite surprised by the fact that had happened. And if I had not gone and done that, we wouldn't know that those roots were growing better. And so just observing everything as much as possible when you have the time.
There's a wonderful app, if you don't have it, and I see Annie Landless is here today, but Soil Mentor is a brilliant thing that you can all get on your phones, and it takes you through all the different visual soil assessments, and there's also a lot of information, farming information, because they teamed up with Nicole Masters. I mean, it's a mine of information, so get that on your phone.
As far as feeding your soil is concerned, it obviously depends what your farm is like, what suits you in terms of labour and equipment and what you're growing. But at Groundswell, we're going to be running the Soil Medic tent, looking at microbes, compost, bokashi, Johnson Sioux, Korean natural farming, those different elements, having farmers saying this is how you do it in a really nuts and bolts way. So hopefully that will build on from this if you're interested in coming.
Just to add to that, from my perspective, I really feel very strongly that there's a big job for biology of all kinds to do, and that there's a big space for every kind of company, and what we really want to try and do is work together to move the needle against the chemical companies, or to support farmers to try and use more natural products. So there's so much stuff out there. I encourage you to go and have a look at it all. Right, any more questions? We've got time for another one, two. Thank you.
Bridget, I think you mentioned that producing compost on a farm scale is much more challenging. If it's sort of obvious question, can you just give a few of the sound bites of why and how you overcome that?
It's possibly not just the making of the compost, it's the mindset of who's using the compost. I think it's probably the biggest challenge that we all have. And the particular method that we use is, we've been really encouraging people to do it, and because we've done it. And it's probably more like making wine than making a cake. So we've realized that this particular way of doing it is slightly more challenging, not that much more challenging, but it definitely needs sort of a focus. And most farms, probably mindset and time, because it does take a bit of time. Most farms are really up against it, but we are trialing it on various farms, and it is working. It's making a difference. And what we're trying to do is make it as streamlined as possible, so that we can have a toolkit to give to farmers to make it as easy as possible, and also to show the benefits of doing that. But we also really encourage doing as much as you can. I mean, nature is full of diversity, and the more you can put into it, you know, microbes, vermicars, whatever. And I think this is something that all of you are going to be talking about and thinking about. I remember, 10 years ago talking about microbes and people looking at us like we were completely ning-nogs. Now what we're really excited about microbes as well, but we're really excited about how you energetically switch on microlife. And that is where that's much bigger conversation for today, but start listing out for things like structured water, fourth phase water, and using there's lots of herbs and valerian, dandelions, oak bark, things that actually switch your microlife on and energetically get you to a state where, I don't know, and we call it giggleability. So sometimes you go into an area and you just feel like giggling, like there's the energetic quotient of that area is so overpowering, and when you have that, that's when the whole energetics, the biology, the chemistry, everything's in balance and it's really going. And I just keep your ears open for that, because I feel like there's something 150 years ago, no one would have ever put a seed in the ground without looking up first and seeing what was happening up above us in the cosmos. And that sounds completely woo-woo, but amazingly science is catching up and saying it's not woo-woo. And we would love to talk to you more about this at Groundswell.
Probably got time for one more if there's a burning question from anybody. Okay. Well, I just have time to say a huge thank you. These people are absolutely incredible and they're doing amazing work. I encourage you to talk to them. I also encourage you to come and take a look at our samples. Jenny can talk you through them. And thank you very, very much. If you want to come to our stand, you can have a shot of our gut microbes and learn anything you want about the work that we're doing with farming as well. Thank you so much.